Welcome back to the channel. I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist, and in today's video, I am giving you 5 must-draft players if you want to win fantasy championships in 2024. Please remember to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The first player on this list is Falcons wide receiver Drake London. Standing at 6'4", 213, he is a traditional X wide receiver who is going to dominate the Falcons in total target share. Do not be surprised if his target share approaches that of around 30%. And if he is able to do this, he is going to outperform his ADP. He's currently going 18th overall as the wide receiver 10. This guy is a menace in the short area of the field on slants and is one of the better contested catch wide receivers. He doesn't beat you with speed, but he beats you with sheer physical dominance. Another thing to consider, he's only 22 years old, not even 23, going into his 3rd season in the NFL. This guy has not realized his full potential yet. Capitalize on that while you can. A couple of reasons to like him. As we all know, he suffered under Arthur Smith, but it was worse than that. They had Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke this past season, 2 of the worst quarterbacks who played a snap in the NFL this past year. Well, they signed Kirk Cousins. We all know how amazing he's been for his weapons throughout his entire career, really, especially in Minnesota. Then they also drafted Michael Penix out of Washington, so he received not 1 but 2 quarterback upgrades. They also brought in the Rams scheme instead of whatever Arthur Smith was trying to do. And one thing to think about, Drake London does have some target competition with Kyle Pitts, but when we think about what Puka Nacua was able to do this past season, he received at least 10 targets in 4 of his first 5 games, and the other game in which he didn't receive 10 targets was 7. This is the same exact scheme. He is going to be their dominant wide receiver and receive the highest target share in this offense. This is a Shanahan-style scheme. It is Sean McVay's, so it's his iteration on the scheme, but it is absolutely conducive to fantasy success. Think Cooper Kupp for years and Puka Nacua this past season. When we look at the wide receiver room there, they did sign Darnell Mooney. He's barely had 1,000 yards in 1 season. I mean, he's been trapped in Chicago before Caleb Williams, so that is one thing to consider, but he is absolutely not going to finish remotely close to Drake London in terms of total target share. They have Rondale Moore. He's been really unavailable for a lot of his career. He's had decent high-volume games here and there, but once again, he is not going to be remotely close to Drake London in total target share. Kaderil Hodge, Casey Washington, Ray McLeod, none of these wide receivers are going to be anywhere near him in total target share. The second player on this list is Dolphins wide receiver Jaylen Waddle, still only 25 years old, going into his 4th season. He is being drafted 35th overall as the wide receiver 19. You heard me correctly. The wide receiver 19. That is way too low. This guy is one of the quickest and fastest wide receivers on a Shanahan-style scheme offense. It's Mike McDaniel's iteration of this offense. He uses motion concepts to get his wide receivers free releases. Say what you want about Tua Tagovailoa, but he is one of the best rhythm passers in the entire NFL. Jaylen Waddle receives some fantastic on-point targets from him. He is one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the entire NFL. Even though he's a wide receiver 2, he absolutely could finish as a top 10 wide receiver. He is that talented, and this is an amazing offense to be a part of. Looking at a couple of advanced metrics, this guy is silly. He finished 8th in the entire NFL in yards per out run with 2.68. His 2.35 formation adjusted yards per out run was good for 7th in the NFL. So on a per snap basis, this guy is one of the best wide receivers in the league. His 2.10 yards of target separation was also good for 13th. That does partially have to do with scheme and the quarterback's ability to hit you in stride so that you're not having to stop when the ball is caught, but it is also partially due to his excessive speed. His 62.7% win rate was good for second in the NFL among wide receivers this past season. That means this past season, at least, he was the second most successful wide receiver at getting open and winning his routes. The second most in the entire NFL. Think about that. His 41.3 win rate was also 25th in the NFL, so still better than all but 24 other wide receivers. He is, however, one of the best wide receivers against zone coverage in the entire league. This guy is on a fantastic team that is going to score a ton of points. Their defense isn't going to be that great. It's Mike McDaniels. That guy's just awesome. Another thing to consider, in 2022, a year in which Tyreek Hill was in town, he finished as the wide receiver 8. There is absolutely room in this offense for two elite wide receivers. He dealt with injuries this past season, which really did hamper his total end-of-year finish, but it shouldn't shock anybody if he's a top 10 wide receiver this season. The third player on this list is Texans running back Joe Mixon. Standing at 6'1", 228, this guy is a massive human being at running back. He's going 47th overall as the RB15. You heard me right, the RB15. He's going behind the likes of Rachaad White, who once again lost to Dave Canales, and they've been talking about reducing his workload, and James Cook, the guy who is probably not even going to score a rushing touchdown this season. That's hyperbole, obviously, but this one is silly. This video isn't about values per se, but he is a value, make no mistake. He goes into an offense that is run by Bobby Slowick, who, if you know anything about the history of Bobby Slowick, he was with the 2013 Washington team that had the likes of Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, so on and so forth. So he runs the Shanahan scheme, which you saw what C.J. Stroud was able to do this past season. Well, now they're going to have an effective run game. You need this guy in your lineup. This past week, there was a report which came out in which Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, described Joe Mixon as a workhorse. That is exactly what we want to hear. We want him to receive as many touches as humanly possible in this offense. They did sign Cam Akers. He's not a threat at all. Let's be real here. He is going to be used as a workhorse running back in a Shanahan-style offense. If you thought this Texans offense was good this past season, imagine how hard it's going to be for defenses after they added Stephon Diggs, first of all, but then they also signed Joe Mixon. This offense is going to score a ton of points. This past season, Joe Mixon finished 14th in the NFL with 53 evaded tackles, so despite being 6'1", 228, he is rather shifty, and especially for his size. His 990 yards created was good for 6th in the NFL among running backs. So what that means is, yes, he gets what's blocked for him, but he's also one of the better running backs at creating yards himself, which gets you fantasy points. Also, you know how I said he was going off the board as the RB15? Well, he's going into a much better offense than he's ever been in his entire career, and he's finished as the RB4, 10, and 4 the past 3 seasons. Why going into a better offense where he's still going to be a workhorse is he going 5 spots lower than his lowest finish the past 3 years? What? That's just ridiculous. And once again, this isn't a video about the best values, but still, that's quite a good value. It just seems nonsensical to me, really. This guy is going to win you fantasy championships in 2024. The fourth player on this list is Packers wide receiver Jaden Reed. He's still only 24 years old and standing at 5'11", 187. He's primarily a slot wide receiver, but he can also play Z, so he does have positional versatility. This is a Matt LaFleur offense, which, if you've noticed a theme here, is a Shanahan-style offense. He was a member of the 2013 Washington team, along with Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, etc., and his offense, at least the second half of this past season, was extremely productive. He made Jordan Love look amazing, and Jordan Love is really a great quarterback too, but the scheme really, really helps him. This guy is being drafted at pick 73 as the wide receiver 34. The wide receiver 34. He finished as the wide receiver 25 this past season. What has happened? Who was drafted in terms of target competition to have him being drafted 9 slots lower than this past year? Could he be due for a little bit of touchdown regression because he did have 10 this past year? Sure, but he is Jordan Love's favorite and go-to target in the red zone. And this scheme is conducive to high point scoring. If you watched the playoff game against Dallas, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's being drafted behind the likes of Christian Kirk, and I just cannot get behind that. This guy is going to well exceed his ADP. Looking at a couple of advanced metrics, you're going to see exactly what I mean. His 0.56 fantasy points per route run was good for 8th in the entire league this past season. And his 2.31 fantasy points per target was 5th. This guy, on a per-snap basis, is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL at getting you fantasy points. And if you're trying to win, that's all you care about. His 51.3 win rate was good for 22nd in the entire NFL this past season. And that was just as a rookie. He's going to get better. He's going to refine his route running, which was already really good. He's one of the shiftier slot players in the NFL. He can play Z. So he once again does have positional versatility in this offense, which makes him even more scary. He also gets carries. So he's kind of like a baby Deebo Samuel, at least in the role in which he plays, which makes sense because this is a Shanahan-style scheme, so you kind of want to have a guy that can get end-arounds. But his 45.2 win rate versus man coverage was 12th in the entire NFL. That means on third downs, when you are facing heavy blitzes in man coverage, he is going to be Jordan Love's hot guy. He is going to receive those slants. He's going to receive those drags. He is going to be the guy in motion. He was put in motion quite a bit this past season, and he is going to be fed the ball steadily in this offense. And looking at the wide receiver room, there is some target competition, but it's really a wide-open wide receiver room. There is no established wide receiver one here. Christian Watson, he has had a little bit of surgery, so maybe his hamstrings are okay, but so far in his NFL career, he really has just been unavailable a lot of the time. Then you have Romeo Doubs, a situational X wide receiver. He's okay in the red zone. He has a blow-up game here and there, but he's not consistent, really. No one is taking Jaden Reed's slot job. That is his job. When they are in 11 personnel, Jaden Reed will be on the field. Dontavian Wicks is also a popular breakout candidate, and he's one of the better win rate wide receivers as well. And he has even more positional versatility. But I really don't think he's quite as talented as Jaden Reed. And at least this past season, he did not have the special connection in which Jaden Reed had with Jordan Love. You should expect big things out of Jaden Reed this season, and draft him as the wide receiver 39 and laugh your way to fantasy championships. This guy is being drafted 9 slots lower than he finished this past season. There's been no target competition added. They have the same scheme, and he's going into year 2 with Jordan Love. Take advantage of that. The final player on this list is Washington Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels, standing at 6'4", 210. He is built very, very thin, but he is extremely talented, at least in terms of rushing the ball, and he possesses a nasty deep ball with fantastic touch. He is going 115th off the board as the QB 15. I'm going to show you some stats here in a minute that will make this one of the best values in fantasy football. And it doesn't even matter if he's actually good. Even if he ends up having a career like Justin Fields, which I don't think will happen, but even if, he is the same type of player in the sense of what his rushing upside will be able to provide you. And he's going into a situation in which he does have an established one in Terry McLaurin, along with a questionable number 2 in Jahan Dotson. But he is going to give you an insane weekly floor just due to his rushing upside alone. Now, while he does have the troubling pressure to sack ratio that in 2022 was over 30%, he did bring it down to around 20% this past season, so definitely lower. It was a better season from him. He does have some pocket awareness issues, and when his first read isn't there, he does tend to scramble right away. But for 2024 fantasy football, that's going to get you rushing yards, which gets you fantasy points, so it really shouldn't matter to you. Although his 90.5 passing grade from PFF was 7th in the nation this past season. His passer rating of 121.1 was also 4th in the entire nation. His 9.3 yards per attempt were 5th in the nation, which is really a good sign because it means that he likes to test the field deep, and it's not going to be a dink and dunk type of situation for him. He did have elite talent in Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors this past season, but you still have to be able to throw deep, and he really has a nasty deep ball. His 78.3 adjusted completion rate was good for 6th in the entire nation this past year as well. So while he did have great talent around him, elite talent rather, he took advantage of it. And even though he may not have the type of team in which he did this past season in college in the NFL, he does have Terry McLaurin. They drafted Ben Sinnott. We'll see about him, but he is a very athletic tight end. But the past couple of seasons, however, we have seen rookie tight ends produce, such as Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, so it's definitely not out of the question. And they signed Austin Eckler, who is going to be a fantastic addition for them in the backfield to complement Brian Robinson Jr. So they should have a solid running game, and he should have an outlet at running back if he's not able to scramble. Really, it is going to be a somewhat underrated offense. I don't think it's going to finish near the top or anything. But Jaden Daniels, however, is going to finish much higher than 15th overall among quarterbacks. The past 3 seasons, he had 710, 885, and 1133 yards in college. And that's not to mention that sacks take away from the rushing yardage. And since he did have a higher pressure to sack ratio, that means a good amount of yards were deducted. Just think about the rushing floor that provides for you. You can reasonably project him to be somewhat of a Lamar Jackson-y, Justin Fields-y type of fantasy player for you. And we all know the massive upside that brings. In review, 5 players who are going to win you fantasy championships in 2024 are Falcons wide receiver Drake London. Remember that he received not 1 but 2 QB upgrades, a massive scheme upgrade, the Rams offense, and he is going to be the dominant X wide receiver in this offense, with Kyle Pitts being really the only other threat that you have to worry about, but he will out-target Kyle Pitts. You're going to see massive production from him. Then we have Jaylen Waddle, who's being drafted as the wide receiver 19. In 2022, with Tyreek Hill in town, mind you, he finished as the wide receiver 8. The only reason he didn't finish around the 10th best wide receiver, give or take, is because he dealt with some injuries this past season. Assuming he stays healthy, he is going to massively outproduce that wide receiver 19 tag. This is a Shanahan-style scheme, but it's also the Mike McDaniel scheme. Remember, they get their guys in motion to get free releases. Tua is one of the best ball placement quarterbacks, especially when in rhythm. Take advantage of that ADP. Joe Mixon is being drafted as the RB15. He's going to the best offense he's ever been in. They've said that he's going to be a workhorse, and he's finished as the RB4, 10, and 4 the past 3 seasons. Why is he being drafted at the RB15? Take advantage of that. Jaden Reed is being drafted as the wide receiver 34 this year. He finished as the wide receiver 25 this past season. He's still connected to Jordan Love. He's with Matt LaFleur, a Shanahan-style scheme. He's Jordan Love's preferred red zone target. He's one of the best fantasy points per route wide receivers in the entire NFL. He's still only 24, so he's going to get better. They brought in no serious target competition. He will absolutely finish as better than the wide receiver 34. Draft him and win fantasy championships. Then you have Jaden Daniels. He's being drafted as the QB 15 this season. That's below Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a safe quarterback. but Jaden Daniels has the theoretical upside to be the QB1 overall. He has the upside of a Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson this season. Remember that he had 700 or more yards in each of the past 3 seasons, including 1,133 yards in his last collegiate season, and that's with sacks taking away from that total. He is going to give you one of the highest floors we've seen in recent memory from a rookie quarterback. He does have Terry McLaurin, so he does have a solid number 1 wide receiver. The rest of the situation is somewhat iffy, but if he's forced to scramble, that's only going to get you fantasy points in 2024. Draft all of these players to win yourself a fantasy championship. So those are players that I think are going to win you fantasy championships in 2024. But what do you think? Do you agree with my list? Disagree? Let me know in the comment section and let me know why. Who do you think is going to win fantasy championships in 2024? Let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist, your NFL breaking news source, and the dynasty and redraft implications behind said breaking news. I am building a library of information with which you can use to dominate your redraft and dynasty leagues in 2024 and beyond. Please remember to like and subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and have a good day.